I feel a little bit bad about it, but you know, what are you gonna do? With my C63, it's a 2009, and it's white on black, which is the combo I wanted. Some people think it's common, but I really like it. I wanted to get into a newer generation of Mercedes AMG cars on my channel. I'd been focusing on, you know, mid 2000s, you know, basically the same style engine and transmission and stuff, and I love them. They're bulletproof. And I know from working at the dealership for 10 years that those are just so solid, and I knew them like the back of my hand. But the evolution of my channel requires me to move along. So my next newer but super cheap AMG cars had to have an engine called the M156, which is just its fancy designation. It's the naturally aspirated 63 engine, although it's really a 6.2 liter. These engines had some problems. And before I released my 2009 C63, I actually released a video. I forget what it's titled, but it's something along the lines of, this was the least reliable AMG engine ever built. And it was a bold claim, and it had taken me a little bit of time to figure out if I could, you know, publicly release that claim. But after years of seeing these engines break at the dealer, and then after I left in 2012, hearing the horror stories from my dealership tech friends at Mercedes as they aged, I was like, yeah, this is the least reliable AMG engine ever built, period. So I came out with this video I highlighted 5 things wrong with the engine. There were more. I just didn't want to make it too long. And, you know, I wanted to buy one of these cars that had a very specific engine problem because I wanted to fix it on my channel. That's what I do. I buy cars that need work, I fix them, and some of them get a little instructional, and I figured this would be interesting to show people how to do because it is something they can do at home. There'd been a pretty famous car with this engine where the guy rebuilt it at home because the dealer quoted him like $50,000 or something, and it was an R63. It was very rare. One year, there's like 50 of them in the States. So this guy did all the engine work at home. It was amazing, and I'm like, this is totally something people can do to a certain extent with the top end. So I finally, after months, I found a C63 AMG that was listed specifically with the engine problem that I wanted, which was bad head bolts, which would then blow the head gaskets. Obviously, you're taking the heads off, and then at that point, they also had issues with the lifters and the cams. So I was gonna just show it all, you know, over, you know, maybe a 3-part series or something like that. So I find this car, I call the guys in Kentucky, 5 hours away from Chicago, where I live. And I get him on the phone, and I'm like, can you explain to me the problem? It seemed weird, but I wanted to make sure his engine was bad, but in a totally opposite reason that most people are like asking those types of questions. They're asking to find out, is it bad? I wanted to make sure that it was definitely bad and not misdiagnosed because I really wanted a car to have this bad engine. So as he's talking to me, I'm like, oh, this is hit or miss. Like, I don't know if he's diagnosed this right, but I'm going to assume he's priced this thing $6 or $7 grand less than what it would go for, that he's at least had it diagnosed at a shop. Okay, so I'm like, I'm going to go buy this car. It was priced really well, so I'm like, worst case scenario, and the engine is good, whatever. Okay, I got a cool car. I'll start modifying it right off the bat. So I get to Kentucky. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm looking at this. I started up, and it's cold. Got my hands on the engine. It's totally cold. Like I asked him, I'm like, I won't buy the car if you start it up and warm it up before I get there. I hate when people do that. You gotta check these things out when they're cold. There can be so many issues that can be masked by warming up an engine, smoke and noises and whatnot. So totally cold. It was 40 degrees out. I started up, and this thing is perfect. And no smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe. That was his big thing. He's like, when you start it up, smoke will blow out of the tailpipe, and then it'll clear up. It's got a low coolant light, and when the head bolts broke, coolant would get sucked into the combustion chamber, and that was kind of your first sign that, you know, you had this issue. So it didn't have that. It ran great. And then one of the other, you know, many other issues had to do with rattling from the engine. It could be one of like 3 different things, but all very expensive and interesting to fix. So it didn't have that either. This thing starts up perfect, no noises at all. We go for a ride, transmission, perfect, shifts great, no howling from the rear end. Mechanically, I'm like, this is awesome. You know, it's got a really bad tire, the alignment's off, and it's just kind of hacked up. It's a rebuilt title car that was fixed 3 years ago, is hitting the rear quarter. I could tell they didn't do the best job. The body lines weren't really the best and whatever, but for $8,500, It was a 68,000 mile C63. You can't touch it. I was just about to buy a smashed one at auction for 13. So like these things still hold, they're still worth more, 22, 23,000 for this car with a clean title. I'm still thinking there's something wrong with this engine because he did say sometimes it wouldn't smoke. So I ended up making the deal. I buy the car and I drive it home, even though he told me it had to be towed. This is how bad he thought this engine was. He's like, you got to get this thing towed. And after running, I'm like, no, I called off the truck. I had a truck like lined up for this. Called him off and I drove it home. I had a friend with me. We actually picked up another car at the same time. So we bought that one first, then drove to Kentucky, bought this one. Drove home from Chicago. The first half hour, my wife's calling me, hey, how's the trip going? Babe, I can't talk. Leave me alone. I gotta concentrate because this car's gonna blow up. I'm like, I have no idea what's wrong with it and I'm freaked out, So I'm like, I really need to concentrate on driving right now. An hour later, I'm calling her up. I'm like, babe, this car is awesome. I'm jamming out. It's got a great stereo. It's running great. It sounds ridiculous. It's straight piped and stuff, but that engine just sounds amazing. So I'm driving this car. I drove it home 5 hours. I didn't even have to top it up with coolant. I did nothing. I just pulled over probably 4 times to check everything over. Everything was great. Didn't need a tool. Didn't need any fluids at all. So I get home and I'm trying to come up with a game plan. Like, what am I going to do with this thing now? Like, I really did think something was going to be wrong with it. I ended up finding it had a coolant leak. And I traced that back to the thermostat housing. It had a little nipple on there that broke off. So then I'm like, wow, this guy, unfortunately, was a nice guy. He probably just Googled C63 and coolant light. And when you do that, everybody on the internet says your head bolts are bad. That's it. So he probably freaked himself out, head bolts, and he put it in the ad. As he said, it probably needs head bolts and head gaskets. That's why it's cheap, whatever. So I replaced the thermostat housing in my driveway, half hour, $100, no more coolant leak. That's it. I mean, this engine is perfect. Now I did a couple other little things. I did do a power steering pump, an air conditioning line, and some bushings, whatever. No big deal, but I sorted this car out just for, a few $100 and just a little bit of my time in the garage, and mechanically it's in excellent condition now. I put probably a couple thousand miles on it and no sign of white smoke or anything. So this guy's definitely probably seen these videos, and I do, I feel a little bit bad about it, but what are you gonna do? So now the C63 is at a body shop, and I'm not gonna say this is karma coming back to get me, although a lot of people mentioned this in the video I released where we take the bumpers off to kind of look at the quality of work that was done by the body shop that rebuilt it after it was sold at auction. Because I suspected they did not do a good job. The gaps, and there were so many signs and everything. And that was after seeing that when I initially was looking to buy the car, I'm like, this is gonna give me a great opportunity to show people what to look out for. And that not, sometimes you see these cars, especially in pictures on the internet, and it's like, oh, that looks great. Oh yeah, I'm gonna save like 10 grand on a rebuilt title, great. But if this is a car that you really wanna keep forever and you want it to be nice and pristine or whatever, some of these shops just hack them up. They hack them up, they slap the bumpers on, they just get them to fit, and the whole car could be twisted, whatever. And some states, the inspection is nothing. It's like, is your windshield cracked? No, okay, you're good. So this car, we took the bumpers off, and where it was hitting the rear quarter was still kind of like smushed in. And then we go to the front end, and you could tell like there was a frame rail extension that's replaced. It was swayed a little bit, and there were some other signs here and there, overspray and whatnot. But overall, even with all of that considered, now I'm fixing it up on the cheap. We're not gonna like go replace the quarter panel and go nuts. It's always gonna have a rebuilt title. But even with that, even after I spent a couple grand on the body work and whatnot, it's still like a roughly 10 or 11,000. We'll see what it ends up, once we're fully done, for this car that mechanically is perfect. So at the end of the day, it was an amazing deal, and it definitely taught me a lot, especially once I knew we were going to find some damage, but I didn't know how bad they would let these things go. And it's nothing that affects the safety of the car, but it's like, you could have just spent a little bit more time on this and made it really nice, So, yeah, but the engine has been perfect, and now we're moving along to modifications. So we're gonna start off with the exhaust, and we're actually gonna demodify the exhaust. So the guy straight piped it. It still has the front catalytic converters, and that's it. And then he went to like Midas or something, some regular exhaust shop, and it's got some rusty old pipes on an AMG car, and It had blue flame tips coming out the back. It was horrible. I actually attempted to crush them in one of my videos in a hydraulic press. But this thing also had a bunch of racing stickers on them and stuff like that. So I've demodded all of that. It looks like a normal C63. I found the factory mufflers, which are insanely expensive. They sell for like $800-900. I found them for $450 from a guy who saw my video, liked how it sounded with straight pipes, and decided to lop them off, duplicate what I hated, and then sell me these mufflers. So it's a great deal. He loves the way his car sounds, so it's a win-win. But putting the mufflers on, then we have long tube headers. I've converted it to flex fuel, so it runs E85 now, or any mix of ethanol and gasoline. And then we're gonna just do some regular bolt-ons. It's naturally aspirated, so it's kind of hard to get power out of it without spending $10,000 on a supercharger. So yeah, we're just gonna have some fun. It's getting wheels, getting wrapped. My advice to someone that wants a car with a 63 motor is, you better love the power delivery and the sound, because if you don't, you probably don't want the hassles that go along with it. So a lot of people are very particular where they're either M156 63 motor fanatics because it revs really nicely. It feels amazing. It's a wonderful race engine. It's a flat tappet design engine that was really derived. You could tell it was built with racing in mind. So it's great from that if you can appreciate that. But if you're just looking for a cool AMG car to tool around town, it can add up. I mean, even the later ones, there were a lot of things they didn't fix, ever. The head bolts they did, but yeah, so it's finicky. It's not like the generation of AMG cars before where you could just like change the oil every whenever and they kept on going. These things are very finicky, and Mercedes kept with the 10,000 mile interval, which is crazy to me for that engine. So I would say love the car first and then accept its flaws second.
Are you looking to buy your dream car? Premier Financial Services offers the flexibility of financing with the tax benefits of leasing. The PFS Simple Lease offers quick approvals and easy termination when you are ready for the next car. Visit our website and follow us for more.